You tried crocheting a plushy amigurumi ball, and instead of this is what you got. Well, and if that's your case, then this is the right video for you. If you're new here in the channel, I am Bianca from Crocheniacs, and if you want to learn how to crochet amigurumi from scratch, or if just like me, you love everything amigurumi related, then you got to the right channel. So tip number 1 to get to the result of a perfect and round amigurumi ball with plushy yarn, the first thing that we have to pay attention is the magic ring. Of course, this is not a rule, but usually when we crochet an amigurumi ball with cotton yarn, we start with 6 single crochets in the magic ring, and we go 6, 12, 18, and so on. But with the plushy yarn, if you do exactly the same mathematics behind the creation of the ball, it will get pointy. And I heard that many times from people trying to crochet exactly the same pattern that was done with cotton yarn. When they try to do the same with plushy yarn, this problem happens. Just so you know, I used exactly the same amount of stitches and rounds with both of these balls to show to you. The difference is that in this one, I started with 6 single crochets in the magic ring, and this one I started with 8 single crochets in the magic ring. The thing is that when we crochet, we start the magic ring with 8 single crochets, we got to a bit more flattened result, and here it gets pointy. Now observe the difference when we compare with the cotton yarn. This one is perfectly round, as you can see, and I started with 6 single crochets. 6 single crochets, 6 single crochets. Look how different they are. So to sum up, instead of going 6, 12, 18, 24, with a plushy amigurumi ball, we start with 8, and then 16, and then 24, and then 32, and so on. This is the main difference with using cotton yarn when we want to crochet an amigurumi ball. And since we are talking about the magic ring, my tip number 2 is start with a larger crochet hook size. And what do I mean by that? If you plan to crochet your amigurumi ball with a 5mm crochet hook size, start the magic ring with a bigger one. For example, a 6mm or 5.5. I don't have a 5.5, I guess. That's okay. The idea is that if you start the magic ring with your stitches too tight, the probability that it will get pointy is a bit bigger. So when you start using a bigger crochet hook size, it will be, we don't want it to be loose because we want our stitches very close to each other. We don't want to see stuffing, we don't want to see gaps and all. But when you have your magic ring, your single crochets in the magic ring, a little bit loose, and we will also avoid creating this unwanted pointy parts in our amigurumi ball. So tip number 2, to sum up, start with a larger crochet hook size with the magic ring. Bianca, you're still talking about magic ring. My God, all the tips are about magic ring. Well, not all of them. But my tip number 3 is also with the magic ring. Because I know that depending on the plushy yarn that we are using, it can break really easily. And this is something that we hate. In fact, I know lots of people who don't like to work with polyester fiber because they break very easily. And we see the remaining pieces of thread in our desk, in our clothes, and it's awful. I know, but it also depends on the brand. I am currently working with another brand that I have worked with this brand before, but now I'm looking there because I can see my amigurumi and I still don't want to show it to you. But I am working with this brand and I finished a big amigurumi, probably that size. Yeah. I think this is one of the biggest amigurumi I have ever crocheted. I usually prefer tiny amigurumis, but this one is really big. And so far, I am in love with this yarn because it does not break easily. We cannot see remaining threads while we crochet. You can frog the project. By the way, have you seen my shirt? Okay, but you can frog the project and the yarn doesn't break that easily, and it also does not break when we crochet the magic ring. But depending on the brand, because this is not about any brand, I don't want to make this video specific about any brand. This is not the goal. I just want to say that depending on the brand that you work, starting the magic ring can be a nightmare. There is a brand that I've tried before and I simply couldn't make it because the yarn was breaking like all the time, and I tried the magic ring more than 5 times and I gave up. So if this is your case, you can start the magic ring with cotton yarn. Yeah guys, we will use cotton yarn with polyester combined to crochet the magic ring. So when we try to crochet the magic ring using plush yarn, this might happen. Oh my god, this is a nightmare. I already have 6 single crochets here in the magic ring, just so you know. I am pulling and it's a nightmare. We cannot even close the magic ring. Yeah, these were all my attempts here to close this magic ring. A nightmare, right? So instead of crocheting the entire magic ring using plush yarn, what I usually like to do is start the magic ring using a cotton yarn. So what I usually do is I start the magic ring using cotton yarn. You make the magic ring the way that you usually do. Okay? And now you will make all single crochets inside this magic ring that we have cotton yarn. So I take the cotton yarn here and I will make one, two, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 single crochets inside this cotton magic ring, and now instead of pulling the plushy thread that will break easily, you pull the cotton thread and it closes the amigurumi. We can still see the loop here from the red cotton yarn, and I chose the red color intentionally because I wanted you to see. But if we keep crocheting this like this amigurumi, let me insert the crochet hook here and I'll make an increase. For example, this yarn is so bad. It is breaking while I try to make the tutorial. You see that we cannot even see the red yarn anymore. It's here. It will be like inside the amigurumi. And even if I force it a little bit, we cannot see any red yarn, only here inside the inner part of this amigurumi that we are starting, and you can tie a knot and cut this red yarn here. Tip number 4, stuffing. Yeah, no more magic rings for you today. Yeah guys, but stuffing is something so important, and the way you stuff your amigurumis and the amount of stuffing that you put in the amigurumi makes a big difference. Something that I love to do, this bow is well stuffed, but if you observe, if I do this, look what happens. It looks like an onion. I flattened my amigurumi and it's not good, it's not beautiful. Can you see? It's like almost an oval shape. So the amount of stuffing that you put in the amigurumi and how you stuff it makes a big difference. So this is my tip number 5, and actually it works for all amigurumi, not only plushy amigurumis. But the thing is that usually plushy amigurumis are a bit bigger than the ones we crochet with cotton yarn. Of course, it depends on the thickness of the cotton yarn that you use, but usually plushy amigurumis are bigger. So be careful with the amount of stuffing that you put in your amigurumis. I mean, it can get empty very easily because you don't want your amigurumi empty. It will be awful and it will be very ugly in the end, but you also don't want to overstuff it and create gaps between stitches. So be careful with the amount of stuffing that you put inside your amigurumis, and also shape it with your hands. You see that while we were talking, I was doing like this, reshaping it with my hands. It's the same thing that we do with our pillows in our couch. We do that. I do that in my house, and I remember because my mom always does this thing. My mom is also like always tapping the pillows, organizing in the couch, and when we receive visitors, it's like, we have to organize the entire house, and you start tapping the pillows to put everything in order. It's exactly the same thing with amigurumi. Consider that it's a pillow, and you have to reshape it with your hands from time to time. And tip number 5, yarn under or yarn over using plush yarn. The yarn under technique makes the stitches a bit more tight than when we crochet the yarn over technique. If you're a beginner and you're crocheting with cotton yarn, honestly, it does not make that big a difference to see the stitches and differentiate the stitches if they are yarn under or yarn over, for example. And I am a yarn under girl. I usually like to crochet yarn under because I like my stitches very close to each other, and I hate when there are gaps between stitches. So if you look at this amigurumi here that I crocheted entirely with the yarn under technique, and if you compare with this cute pig here, I crocheted entirely with the yarn over technique, you can see the stitches pretty well with both of them. No problem at all. And of course there are more differences between these two amigurumis when it comes to stitches, but this is not the goal of today's video. But when we are talking about plushy amigurumi, my experience is the tighter the stitches are, the more difficult it is to see the stitches. Let me say it again. I heard from lots of people who don't like to work with polyester fiber, don't like plushy amigurumi, that they cannot see the stitches very well. They cannot differentiate what's a single crochet than an increase, for example. And in fact, it is more difficult to see everything if we compare with a cotton amigurumi, for example. But it gets even more difficult if your stitches are super tight. It will probably not be that easy for me to show it in this video, but just so you know, I used exactly the same yarn to crochet both the ball and the octopus, which is a free pattern here on YouTube, by the way. And if you want the written pattern, I can leave the link in the description so you can get in my shop. But just so you know, with the same yarn, this octopus here, I crocheted with 4mm crochet hook size. And this one, I don't remember if I crocheted with a 5 or a 6mm crochet hook size. I think it was a 6, I'm not so sure. But the interesting thing is that when I put this shoe like one right next to the other, I can see the stitches way better with this one that I crocheted with a bigger crochet hook size than this one. And I remember that when I was crocheting this octopus, I asked myself if I liked the yarn or not, or if I would recommend it to a beginner, because it was pretty difficult for me to see the stitches. And it was only after that I realized that I was using a crochet hook that was too small for the yarn. Therefore, I couldn't see the stitches very well. While here, it was way easier just because I used a bigger crochet hook size. I do have lots of other tips to share with you on how to work with plushy yarn and to make your journey easier, better, faster, more joyful. But I don't want this video to be that long. I think it's already long enough. But I would love to hear from you. Which other tips do you have to work with plushy amigurumis? Please let me know in the comments because I want to listen. I want to listen all the tips that you have to share with the community. And maybe, who knows, I can bring your tips in next videos. But now I'll leave you this video here because I'm pretty sure you're going to like it too.